opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The bills are set down for third reading next sitting day. Call on Government Orders of the Day numbers 6 and 7.
Maraeroa A and B blocks Claim Settlement Bill first reading. Maraeroa A and B blocks Incorporation Bill first reading.
The Honourable Cheriana Turia.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Maraeroa A and B blocks Incorporation Bill and the Maraeroa A and B blocks Claim Settlement Bill be now read a first time. I intend to move at the appropriate time that the bills be considered by the Māori Affairs Committee, and I want to advise the Speaker that I will be using my notes. I would like to welcome the representatives of Maraeroa A and B block who are here today for this very special occasion. The endeavours of people such as Glenn Katu, Edward Moana Emery, Brian Stanley and Piripi Crown continue to bear fruit, and this private member's bill today is a testimony to their dedication and their commitment to working together. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Today is a significant moment for the descendants of the original owners of Maraeroa A and B blocks, as we acknowledge their historical treaty grievances and seek to move forward. And while we look forward to realising the potential that exists in this settlement for the generations to come, we acknowledge and honour the legacy provided by the leadership of Charlie Wehi, the original claimant, and Murdoch Paki, a much respected member of Te Maru o Rereahu Trust. It is almost a year to the day that I joined with Ngāti Maniapoto, Raukawa, Ngāti Rereahu and Ngāti Tūware Toa at Pāharakeke to sign the deed on behalf of the Crown. It is a great privilege to be able to now act on the intent of that deed and to be able to sponsor one of the two bills being introduced today under the cognate procedure, namely Maraeroa A and B blocks Incorporation Bill. The two bills being introduced today are the final steps towards the completion of a journey that has taken many years. The bills are significant in that they seek to re-establish broken relationships in the promise of a better future for all. The Maraeroa A and B blocks lie on the volcanic plateau east of Te Kuiti. The interests of several iwi and hapu groups intersect here, being predominantly Ngāti Rereahu, Ngāti Maniapoto, Ngāti Tūware Toa and Ngāti Raukawa. In September 2008, terms of negotiations were signed with the Te Maru o Rereahu Trust and the Crown commenced exploratory work with Ngāti Rereahu interests in the Maraeroa blocks. In July 2009, the Crown agreed to negotiate a block settlement with the Trust in relation to the Maraeroa A and B blocks, with the beneficiaries being all descendants of the original owners of those blocks, regardless of iwi or hapu affiliation. The Trust sought a fresh mandate in August 2010 to negotiate on behalf of the descendants of Maraeroa blocks. This mandate was recognised on the 18th of November 2010 and a deed was initialled on the 16th of December 2010. 5 ratification information hui were held in January 2011. The hui were held at Mangere, Te Kuiti, Waihi Marae, Pāharakeke and Kōkiri Marae in Wellington. I am told that the hui were well attended and supported by owners residing in those places. I think this is worthy of acknowledgement, the commitment, the resourcing and the manaakitanga of our marae and entities who give so generously to enabling the settlements process to flow. The block settlement recognised the Claim Settlement Bill is outside the settlement framework and does not comprehensively settle all the claims of the claimant groups. All claims, however, relating to the Maraeroa A and B blocks will be extinguished by this settlement. I acknowledge that this feature in itself, that the settlement relates exclusively to the two blocks of Maraeroa A and B, adds another layer to the legislation in that we must also be aware that there are other negotiations occurring between the parties in respective areas outside of this settlement. The land upon which the people of Maraeroa A and B blocks settled and exercised kaitiakitanga was rich in resources. It was an area regarded as a kono kai that provided a wide range of foods and resources for all of the iwi of the surrounding district. The Crown acknowledges that in the 1862 native land legislation imposed on Māori land owners without consulting them, and that the native land laws facilitated Crown and private purchasing of Māori land. I am reminded of the wisdom of one of my tūpuna, Tiniro, who left us the vision of these words: Toi tū te kupu, toi tū te mana, toi tū te whenua. And in that message, he urged us all to hold fast to our language, to our land, and as the essence of who we are as mana whenua, the people of the land. It is an intimate and all-enduring relationship. The tangata, the people, always connected to the whenua, their land. A relationship which forms the very foundation of our being, and yet a relationship that has been sorely tested in actions of the Crown over the past 170 years and more. In this legislation, we saw this manifest from 1884 to 1908, a period of time in which the Crown had a monopoly over purchasing from Maraeroa A and B blocks. Between 1895 and 1908, the Crown purchased the individual interests of most of the owners of Maraeroa A and B blocks, totalling a massive 90% of 2 blocks. The Maraeroa A and B contains significant areas of indigenous forest. The prices paid by the Crown for these blocks did not appear to include the value of the indigenous timber on the land, and the milling of indigenous forest removed the habitat of indigenous species. The alienation of these blocks separated the descendants of the original owners of Maraeroa A and B blocks from their wāhi tapu, undermined their cultural connection to the land, and deprived them of the ability to access ngā wāhi koinga kai, cultural resources and materials for construction. The loss of these lands undermined the social and traditional tribal structures of the people, their autonomy and their ability to exercise customary rights and responsibilities. Today, this legislation is an attempt to rectify and remedy the wrong. The Maraeroa A and B Blocks Incorporation Bill is a private bill in my name, required to establish the Māori Incorporation, which is to form part of the post-government settlement entity. This bill has also resulted from the deed which was negotiated and agreed between the Crown and the descendants of the whenua. I am proud to sponsor this bill on behalf of the descendants of the Maraeroa blocks. I want to also thank my parliamentary colleagues for supporting the procedural changes necessary to allow both government and private bills to be considered together as cognate bills through the legislative process. Both bills need to come into force at the same time so the transfer of the settlement assets to the incorporation can take place. I hope that this settlement will atone for these wrongs and continue the process of healing. It will mark the beginning of a new relationship with the descendants of the original owners of Maraeroa A and B blocks that is based on mutual trust and cooperation. Mr Speaker, I consider the bill should therefore proceed without delay to the Māori Affairs Committee. I commend these bills to the House.
Question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Parakura Horomia.